Here is P.W. Gopal.
You guys mind if I sing a little bit? Oh, wow. I did get to travel for about 17 years, and it really was one of those moments where it was because God said so. I went kicking and screaming. I had only, I played guitar for therapy, just so I wouldn't hurt anybody. And those 5 chords that I learned to play for, if you're familiar with the Ministry of Young Life, our guitar player moved, and so we couldn't do club anymore, and so I was like, well, I better learn some chords. And I learned 3 chords, which turned into 5 chords, and then in the worst scenario possible, God spoke to me and said, I need you to leave your job, which you actually are trained for and have some skill with, and I need you to go and tell people about Jesus in some of the ruddiest, darkest places. And I was like, I don't know how to play music, but I made an album, and a friend of mine gave me a $30,000 loan on a handshake, which included a Suburban, and he said, I want you to go and don't say no to anybody for 2 years. And this is an atheist who was moved to clear out my debt and send me on the road. And so 3,000 shows later, yeah, I'm still listening to the Lord. So that's what I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But I wrote an entire album about a place in St. Joe, Missouri, where I learned more about the gospel than any time that I've had in the church. And so this is called The Middle of the Night. Time has never left me alone. It's tied to me like a devilish stone that watches me in the middle of the night when I can't sleep and I can't fight. We're headlong into the mire, and I fear I will not survive. This bed is burning me alive, and I'm stuck here in the middle of the night. Whoa. Let it be over now, over now, over now, let me be done. Oh, the sound of love is a sound for some with a breath said, and the breath is gone. Have you ever laid in a cold, cold bed and dreamed that things would be right again? You know the night for me is hard. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Let it be over now, over now, over now, let me be done. Let me be done. Let me be done. Time has never left me alone. It's tied to me like a devilish stone that watches me in the middle of the night when I'm stuck here in the middle of the night. Whoa. Let it be over now, over now, over now, let me be done. Well, I'm grateful to be here. It's funny, when I traveled for 17 years, I'd always book my shows in the Northeast in the fall, in the most northern places, and then I would always catch the leaves, and as I went south, I would still catch leaves. I live in the mountains right now, and that's kind of a deal I made with my wife. She's a beach person, and I'm from an island, and I hate the heat. Like, there's something about living in the mountains that just gives you incredible peace. Our area, I live outside of Asheville, North Carolina, and we've had a pretty rough year. Our town is it's slowly dying. We had a lot of influx of support after Helene, and but now we're starting to have to take care of ourselves, and it's been pretty rough. I think Asheville itself is still in some way surviving, but the outlying areas need a ton of help. This morning is going to be mainly about storytelling. It's what I've done for 20 years. And it's the way that I think that I've wanted people to connect deeply with Jesus. I was raised a Hindu, 330 million gods in that religion, and it gave me a really broken sense of self, trying to appease what cannot be appeased. I grew up in an incredibly violent home, and I became a very violent person. It's what I know, and it's what I'm good at. And I'll tell you, just to be upfront, I have been afraid of everything my entire life. And that's something that God has been healing me of. And He healed me by making me work. And this is the part of the gospel that I think we've kind of maybe taken out of the definition. So much of my upbringing has been focused on people coming to know the Lord, and then I think the gentleman said it earlier, just about their personal relationship with Jesus. And as a Hindu, as somebody from the East, looking at this message of like, well, why do we need a Messiah? What are we being saved from and saved to? There's so much more to the gospel that brings healing and wholeness. My rabbi friend would say, nothing missing, nothing broken. He's like, when you talk about shalom, you talk about peace. He's like, for us, it's practical. It means nothing missing, nothing broken. If it's missing, God will replace it. If it's broken, He's going to ask you to fix it. There's this mechanism that the gospel invites us into where, for some unknown reason, God's Spirit now resides in us. And He says, you go do it. And you will do even greater things than these. Like, Jesus is saying that to us. That is the creepiest verse to me in the Bible. John 14, is that we get to be involved in the work of Christ, and that in some regard, His glory comes in, ushered in by possibly the work of our hands and our feet. God made me to wear flannel. That's the best way I can say it. People are made to be fast. That is not me. It takes me a long time to figure things out and to get things to work, but I realize that I have no patience to execute and to stay in something long term. I can start things and then I just want to be done. Let me try and learn something else. The hardest thing about that is you can't do that with people. You can't understand and learn people in such a way where you can fix them. But I do believe that God transforms people's lives. and somehow we get to be a part of it. And I'm going to tell you, not as a teacher, but as somebody who can possibly remind us of the truth of the gospel, is that all things will be made right. And God takes dead things and he brings them to life, and he makes living things beautiful. And that's the invitation for us, is to go in and be a part of that work and to see redemption and reconciliation happen. And it came to me through very odd circumstances. I grew up in desegregation, so I went to inner city schools and got my ass kicked hard. And then I came back to the suburbs, and the same thing happened, and I had no place. I didn't fit in with the white culture or the black culture. There was just me. And the only thing I could do was defend myself. And so I was a complete mess. But there was a guy who kept coming to my high school. His name was Steve. And if you're familiar with the ministry of Young Life people are weird. They have the most odd sense of humor. And Steve was a Young Life leader at my high school. But the interesting thing about Steve is he was a quadriplegic. So he had no use of his arms or his legs. At 17 years old, at a neighborhood pool down the road, the ball went into the pool during rest period, and he dove in to get it and snapped his neck. And he woke up in his bed with his Young Life leader, Kevin, sitting next to him. And Kevin said to Steve what I would say to you now. He said, Steve, there's more to you than your arms and your legs. There's more to you that God would want to use. Steve, are you in or out? He's like, because you can spend the rest of your life trying to become what you think you're supposed to be, and there's a really good chance that you're going to become a self-made mess. Steve, are you in or out? So Steve decided he was in. He went through a year and a half of rehab. They put him in a 450-pound wheelchair. And this is the funny part. I knew about him because I saw him every day. He would come to the high school and roll around the high school, and I thought he was there because he had no friends, but he came down the double yellow line. He didn't like to using the sidewalks. He took his 450-pound wheelchair right down the double yellow line to the high school because he thought it was funny. And I thought this guy was completely unhinged. And it was a very normal saying to say the quad was in the road. And so I saw him in the Commons one day, and our Commons was a little bit bigger than this area, and I saw him over there, and I was like, I don't want any part of this guy. So I just kind of moved this way, and then you could hear his wheelchair kind of change directions. He could basically move his arm up and down 2 inches and a little bit side to side. So he got the joystick working, and he starts coming towards me, and I was like, nope, go this way. And it became a little cat and mouse where we're like facing each other. I was 15 years old, and he kicks it in a high gear, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I start running away from him, and he hits me with the wheelchair. And I'm like, surely something bad's going to happen if I hit this guy. And this is how he decided that we should become friends. I looked at him and I was like, man, you can't, this is the thoughts running through my head. I was like, you can't bathe yourself. You can't feed yourself. You can't do anything for yourself. And my next thought was even more convicting. I was like, why am I jealous of you? This is the first time I met him. And we got to hang out a little bit, and eventually he knew way more about me than I knew about him. God told him things about me, and he approached me and said, you want a job? And I said, sure. And he's like, I got some stuff I need to get organized. And he goes, I got a cool van outside if you want to go. I was like, can't say that to people now. Come get in my van. So I got in the van, and somebody else drove us to his house. And I will tell you this. One of the biggest things about the gospel is for me, is what I learned from Steve. God has given us everything we need to present this gospel and to give goodness and wholeness and let people experience some peace. And Steve's tool was a table. It was a wheelchair too, but it was a table. So he invited me into his house, and he lived in like this addition to the house, and his mom who ran a tight ship. Judy Conroe was a lifelong waitress and tough as nails and cussed way more than me. And she invited me in, and I sat down at this table, and he goes, I have 150,000 baseball cards. Would you be interested in organizing them? I'll pay to do it. And no, I said, sure, I don't know anything about baseball, and I don't know anything about baseball cards, but I'll sit and organize your cards. And so I organized 150,000 baseball cards, and then they made me do it again. He just did whatever it took to keep me at that table. And in the middle of that, he's like, I'm hungry. Can you feed me? And I was like, sure. And then Judy comes in, and Judy's mean as a snake. Judy would walk by and smack me in the back of the head. She's like, you feed him right, little shit. And I was like, I mean, every time she'd come by, I'd wince a little bit. But it was the most loving thing. And I took a beating at home, but I went to that table willingly. I wanted to be there. She was so kind and amazing and cooked for me. And I took care of Steve, and I learned how to feed him, and I learned how to do his personal care. And I spent almost every day with him for 7 years. And I learned about his values. His van was called, we had Freedom 1, which somebody wrecked, wasn't me. And then he had Freedom 2. So I drove around Freedom 2. And the value of freedom, the thing that he wanted most for himself, he wanted out of that wheelchair. I mean, he couldn't wait to get to heaven and to walk among the greats and to see Jesus face to face. You know, we see him in part now, but eventually I don't know how we're even going to stand in his glory. And Steve he's not in the chair anymore, but he wanted freedom for everyone else too. And he gave me an environment to do it in. And the tool is the table. I sat at that table and I heard more about Jesus. And then he said, the normal part of the gospel that we do for everyone is come and see. He did the come and see, and he gave me time and space to sit and figure. I was a Hindu. How am I supposed to get through 330 million gods? By the way, I didn't know that at the time. We had 5 in a shrine in our house. And they were blue like a Smurf, so way more interesting than Jesus. I was like, wow, this guy's got blue eyes and blonde hair and hangs out with sheep. Like, I don't want that one. But as I got to watch Steve and the people around him, the Young Life leaders, like, it was extraordinary to see. That's my first look at the bride of Christ. Like, I remember seeing my wife walk down the aisle the first time I saw her in her dress, and it pales in comparison. And she's beautiful, like pales in comparison to seeing Christ lived out in that way. I had time and space. I worked with professional athletes for a long time. I wrote a letter that you had to write a letter. There was barely email at the time. So I wrote a letter to the #1 tennis trainer in the world because I saw his name in a magazine. And I went to Ohio State, the Ohio State University. I'm sure there's no Buckeyes in the room. And I went to school for exercise science. I got paid to scream at people. And so I called this guy, and I emailed him and sent a letter and said, hey, I'd love to work for you. And so I went to Florida, and I worked with some of the best athletes in the world. And I loved the idea. I watched progression in people where you can't see mistakes. And it's because we gave them time and space. We ran everything for them. I made them take naps. I made them eat. I told them what to eat. And they spent 6 hours a day with me, with a coach. They were either hitting balls or I'm torturing them in sand pits and on grass. There's something about using the tools and giving people grace to make mistakes. And I will tell you that Steve is one of the most gracious people in the world. I watched the church in my town. I watched the church in neighboring towns. We are hyper-liberal, surrounded by hyper-conservative, and they hate each other. And I'll tell you, the church is not helping. We're not helping much. And I'm watching our country divide left and right, and I mean, it is just getting out of hand. And I just want to shake the believers and say, hey, you are forgetting your job. You're forgetting your job. You have the job of reconciliation. I have the job of reconciliation. God wants to redeem these things, and maybe he's going to use you. God sent me out of my job because I had a conversation with a friend who weirdly was a famous musician, and he goes, God's got a call in your life. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Give me a job where I can cross all boundaries. This is how the music started. He said, all right, I'm going to start praying for you. And he's like, I think you can do this. I was like, bro, I know 5 chords. He's like, I think you can do this. I'm going to start praying for you. Random circumstances, God sent me on the road with that $30,000 loan. I gave away all my training clients. And I was like, well, I guess I'm a full-time musician now. And I went and learned music while I played the music. I played in, it feels like every disgusting bar from here to Colorado. And I just did loops every year, 600,000 miles of driving. And I found my people, and they were not people that would come into church. They're my favorite people in the world. They are folks that really don't know what God thinks of them. I've spent more time suffering getting to those places than I can even recount. Kansas feels like hell to me. I cannot tell you how many hours I've spent driving across the plains to get to one bar. But it was the place that God taught me the most, because the gentleman told me one thing. He said, if your God is as good as you say he is, he would know his way to my doorstep. So I think you're full of it. And he used very colorful language. And I kept going back, and I kept going back, and we kept having more conversations about Jesus. I wrote that song about him and his friends. So dark, so broken, so busted up, they're not going to go to church. But God is already in that place. I never took Jesus into a bar. Jesus was already there working. And he just wants us to come and co-labor with him. And this is the part of the gospel that I love the most. I tell people I was made to wear flannel. Like, I'm slow. The only thing I can do is I can listen and I can work alongside somebody, and I can try and be patient. Don't ask my wife about that, but I will try and be patient in the process. And when I forget, God reminds me of the grace of Steve. I can't tell you how bad I screwed up. He said, clean my van. So I took it to the car wash, and I took the power washer to the inside. My buddy's like, it's really dirty in here. His wheelchair got all kinds of schmutz on it. And so I was like, yeah, let's spray it out. And no joke, we sprayed out the inside of this van. A river came out of that thing. And it smelled amazing. And somehow God let it run after that. Grace. I got to meet Billy Graham because of Steve. I have been around touches of heaven so much in my life because God's grace came through a person. There's something about sitting at a round table. There's something about sitting with people and sharing a meal. It heals all things. Republican and Democrat and, God can do it through a brown libertarian. There's only 3 of us in the country. We have an annual meeting. I'm recruiting right now. It can happen. And God turned my life around. Several years into it, I kept praying. I said, God, just tell me I just want to do more. I need more work because it's too slow. I can't fix people in a bar. They're only going to see me X amount of time. I said, give me something to do. And in 2004, you remember the tsunami that happened in Southeast Asia in December? In August of the next year, I took some friends. We met a pastor who was overseas, and I took some friends back to my home country, Sri Lanka, and we started doing a documentary about an orphanage. And this orphanage had 28 children that he put in a boat and outran a 350-mile-an-hour wave. I mean, the story is just nothing short of miracles. And so I heard this on Franklin Graham's radio show, and I called BS. I was like, ain't no way this guy did that. And so at this point, there was email, and I emailed him, and he said, PW, if you want to come, come, period. Yours truly, Dylan Sanders. I'm like, okay. So I called my friends. I was like, hey, we're going to go find this orphanage. I know it's in this town. And I have some crazy friends. So we went, and we worked on this documentary for a few years. And on our 3rd trip, 2007, we went back, and there was 84 children now in the orphanage. And we started going through the original 28, and just at dinner time asking, because I didn't quite put the names together. And we got to this one girl's name who we were all pretty fond of, and I said, what happened to Sohenya? I didn't see her. And he said, it's very sad what happened to her. And he kind of glossed over it. And so I knew something was up, and so I asked him again and again. And finally he said, you might need to let this go. He said, she's not here anymore. I said, what does that mean? And he said, her mom lives down the road. There's so many kids in the orphanage that have parents that are local. They just are too poor to take care of them. He said, she went home to visit her mom, and her mom sold her. I said, what does that mean? Her mom, to feed the other kids in the family, sold her to a man in India. And I tell you, it tore us to pieces. It broke our team up. We never finished the documentary. There's 2 folks on the team still don't talk to me because nobody wants to talk about it, And I came home and I was done with the Lord. All that time in the field, all that time talking, writing songs about people and sharing the gospel, I was like, F this, I'm done. But it's one of those things like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Everywhere I went, God put it in my face. I spoke in Jackman, Maine, at a kids camp, and a girl came up to me and she said, I'm supposed to tell you my story. And she said, I helped my mom pay the bills by sleeping with guys. And they pay me, and I give the money to my mom. And 4, 5 other places. This all happened within several months. Fell asleep in Texarkana in a truck stop and woke up, and I saw kids going truck to truck. And I was like, I didn't even know what I was looking at. I know now. Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. Cincinnati, Ohio. I mean, all the places, every place I went, I could find it. I could see it, and it wouldn't come away. I woke up in the middle of the night in my house, and I could hear people in my house. I asked my roommate, he's running around doing Zumba. Like, what's happening at night? He goes, we're all sleeping. I feel like, I'm going crazy right now. I called my church, and I said, help me interpret what's happening to me in my dreams. And said, we know what's going on. Come to this table. So I go to the church, and there's a table, and there's 5 women and an empty seat. And this lady goes, my name's Marlene, and I'm a prostitute, and so are they. And I started looking around for the sheriff. And she said, I work at Verizon Wireless. I take all my extra money and I put it into apartments, and I hide girls. So what do you mean you hide girls? She's like, these are all girls that have been trafficked. They're in human trafficking, and we get them from their pimps and we hide them. I heard you have a big house. Can I have it? I had restored a 4,000 square foot Victorian on Ohio State's campus, and it's put 1,800 hours in the trim alone. And she said, I heard you have a big house. Can I have it? I said, no, ma'am. This is my house. She kept talking. About 30 minutes later, I gave her the keys, and I said, all right, come look. And no joke, within 6 weeks of that, we had several little girls living in the house. I just stayed on the road. Is it falling down? I stayed on the road. My roommates moved out, and my eyes were opened that the church can get involved in a space of giving safety, resources, and opportunities. I won't bore you with the next 16 years, but we've built an organization that is its sole purpose is for people to find freedom in whatever way possible. If we can be helpful, we want to be. Safety is housing, and it's families. When people know that they've got a family around them, when they know they could sit at a round table, when they know that they have resources, they make better decisions. When you are vigilant about life and when you are scared all the time, you cannot grow. And so safety is the first thing. Resources, I mean, you name it. The survivors that get referred to us have a million relationship. Drug counselors, FBI, immigration and customs, and we help manage those relationships. We offer trauma therapy. The PTSD that these girls, men and women, have gone through is far beyond anything the military has seen. We have one survivor that has 31 personalities. It's a safety mechanism that God has allowed for her to keep going. And the opportunities, and this is where you guys come in. I travel and I speak, and I want people to be able to weigh in on this, because like I said, I was meant to wear flannel. I'm slow, and I can sit and listen, but I can't execute. So we are building a list of resources and opportunities where survivors can go to school and find jobs and make careers and be autonomous. It's everything what we want for ourselves and everything Steve wanted for me. If we're going to live in the freedom of Christ, then it's on us to make others free. And I appreciate you listening, and I hope that this is a good reminder that God made you for a purpose. You were created for greatness, but it's that God would resonate inside of you in such a way that it would vibrate the room. When Steve would roll into a room, the room would change. And people responded to the gospel because they felt him. Not just because they saw him and they saw the chair, but they felt the Spirit of God. The same Spirit that holds the earth on its axis and moves it along its ecliptic, that Spirit that rests in us, the power that rests in us, is the power to bring the dead to life and the living in process becoming beautiful. So if there's any way you would love more information or want to partner with us, I'd love to talk to you. And I appreciate your time this morning and really grateful. Paul, thank you for inviting me, and thank you.
Thank you, PW.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, PW's agreed to answer some Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
So think about if you have questions about what he's been doing, what he is doing. But one comment and a question. What this reminds me of is there's an organization called CareNet. They're the largest network of pregnancy support centers in the country. And the president, who has been a speaker here, Roland Warren, he says, we're not pro-life. We are pro-abundant life. And he said the difference is you can run around saying abortion's bad, abortion's bad, abortion's bad, don't have an abortion, we have to fight abortion, and not get to the reality of the situation of the people who are making that decision. The woman who feels there's no hope if she has a child. She can barely get by on her own. What's life going to be? And that the church is failing at stepping in to say, we're going to take care of you. If you have this child, we're going to be with you. We're going to support you. That's abundant life. It's not just a cause of the pro-life. And what I hear you saying about, like, sure, you can be in there against human trafficking and you can get these women out, but if you're not there to support them, have you really repaired? Have you really redeemed? So it's just beautiful what you're doing, what you're talking about. Can you talk? Let me kick off with a question, which is, I've always thought of human trafficking as the thing that happens in Indonesia and Bangkok and all these places.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about human trafficking in America?
Yeah, absolutely. There's more recorded cases. I can't say more. There are recorded cases almost every county in the country, and it is not. So there are many examples of a van pulling up, grabbing somebody, and taking off. But because of how our society works, it can be easier. A lot of the survivors that we know, a lot of the children that we know, it's their families that are trafficking them. It's uncles, it's stepdads. It's the homeless population, the runaway population. Anyone who you consider vulnerable can be approached. I think these are old statistics, but the old statistic was within 48 hours of a runaway being on the street, a trafficker will approach. And I've seen it. I've gotten plate numbers, DL 2004. I still have the box truck memorized from some guys I was following around. It's not hard to see it once you befriend people who are in those situations. And that's hard because the whole world goes to bed at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. And this stuff usually happens, in the wee hours of the night. But these are old stats. 70% of the buyers are suburban men. So there's a demand side, and then there's the actual mechanism. We realized, and I studied this for 9 years. I used to, as I traveled, I'd call the FBI agents that we were connected to. I'd call immigration and customs agent. I mean, I called everybody, and I was like, hey, can I meet with you? And I'd pick their brain. And you start to realize that they were just discovering over the last 15 years what the mechanisms are. You know, everybody's seen the movie Taken. You know, that's kind of the Hollywood version. The mechanisms in the U.S. can look like that. There are definitely organized gangs and the mob, and I mean, you name it. But we're talking about people that are using their kids to pay the bills. The girl that I first met, Susie, I mean, her mom was just trying to pay the rent. And so she encouraged her daughter to just sleep with guys and just take money for it. I mean, it can be just as simple as that. Now, trying to convince somebody that it's not worth their time, you've got to give them some kind of alternative. One of the reasons we started doing therapy first was because we were offering housing, and people are like, I don't even know you. And they don't have no sense of trust. I mean, when I talk about vigilance and hypervigilance, I mean, that's a chemical state of the body of I'm not going to trust anyone. And, you know, we would probably all raise our hands a little bit and say that we have a little bit of cynicism in us and probably call it wisdom. You know, there's a lot of parts of us that are like, even if we see a miracle of God, we're like, I don't know if I buy it, right? Now imagine that to an exponential factor. You can't trust anyone, even the people that are being kind to you. And so we have to almost be in a relationship with somebody for years before they trust us enough to say, all right, what's on the other side of the door? And we're like, there's a table. Come sit, come have a meal. What do you need? Oh, and we've got a family who's got, a beautiful property in the mountains with an apartment above a garage. And we had a beautiful friend who was coyoted from Central America and ended up in North Carolina, or at least the FBI brought her into North Carolina, and she barely spoke English, and we're basically taking her to a property that is fairly remote, and we're like, you just want to hang out here? I mean, it's 30-minute drive to work, if you can find work. And it ended up working. She was willing to go stay on this property in this house with the sweetest people on the planet, but every day was a war for her. Can I trust these people? Who are these people? She was just on edge, just testing the waters to see if we were good people and we weren't going to hurt her. And we brought our entire family around her. My daughters are hilarious and beautiful. I have one terrorist and one angel, and she loves them, and they just broke the ice for her to let her know that we can be trusted. And I have zero interaction with her outside of fixing her cars, and everything she has breaks. And so, she'll just hang out with our family while I fix her car, and then she'll go back to the ranch and stay there. And she was there for 2.5 years, and then praise God, she started making decisions for herself. And she was able to get a job, keep a job, find housing, have friends, have community, hang out in church. There's been absolute miracles around, but it is the slowest process. If you are a person that just considers ROI, this is not the game for you. It does not work that way. This is the prodigal God. This is the wasteful God just opening up heaven to spend so much on one person coming in. And this is the battle that we're fighting. Like, people ask me, what's the recidivism rate? And I'm like, it's 100%. Everybody goes back to their trafficker. This is awful. But for those who know how to long suffer, when God recognizes us as good stewards, he starts to move them in a little closer, right? When we can steward what we have for somebody else, somehow it just works out that they're willing to move in closer. And we've had so many, I don't know how many hours, they said 900 hours last year of just therapy. And those are women who are all moving closer into like, all right, well, they'll call and say, what else? Do you have somebody who can help me with this? And we're like, yes. And I'm 100% lying. I'm just going to find somebody who's going to help me. I have the willingness to help. We'll just go find people. And this is our group in Asheville that is trying to figure this out. We are the 100 movement #1. We're looking for 99 other communities that are willing to build systems of care for survivors.
Hey, PW, thank you for coming and for that message. This is not about human trafficking, but about something that you said related to the political divide where you are and what you've seen in the country. And I was thinking, can you share some thoughts on what Christians and the church can do to bridge that and to rise above it?
Yeah, I mean it's a loaded question. I gave this example yesterday when I was with the Manhattan NCS guys and told them, because somebody asked the exact same question, and just to be honest, I sit in the middle of my right wing friends and my left wing friends, and they've decided to pick sides. And so my first thought is this: the kingdom of God cannot be built by a political party. John 1, we talk about the world designed, ordered system. Anything that we create, that is political, right? Concerning the people or of the people, that's the definition of the word. Anything that we make is a mechanism, and so it can be corrupted. You pull it hard right, it's corrupt. You pull it hard left, it's corrupt. And I can get involved in both and redeem both, right? I have friends that are believers on the left, friends that are on the right, but our job is to make sure that something is being redeemed. If your job is a politician, clean your house. Make sure that God's will is moving forward. And sit at tables, have conversations with people, listen. Because we have way more in common. Like most of the people that I know that are just yelling and screaming online, they just have one source in their ear. And they're just going to listen to that, and they're going to convince themselves that's right. Like I asked one of my best friends, and I don't agree with him on much of anything, but we have beer every 2 weeks at this horrible Mexican restaurant, and we solve the problems of the world, which basically yell at each other. And I was like, have you heard anything in your adult life, the last 10 years, 15 years, I'm baiting him, that's changed your mind? And he's like, no. So if I would tell you anything, I would say, listen to the Holy Spirit and stop thinking you're right. Stop thinking you're right. Because what we do, and so there's two reactions when I share. Thank God I'm not like him. And it's legit, it's fine. And people will hear something they may not like, and then they'll go find a friend that agrees with them, and they'll talk it over and convince themselves that they don't have to change anything. And I can only tell you about the best guy I know. Steve would go in a room, and I could see him, and I knew there's nobody in the room, but I could hear him praying 4 to 6 hours a day. This is a guy who knew the voice of God. And so I knew that when he was going to act on something, that I could follow him. I don't follow any of my right-leaning friends. I don't follow them because that's what they think about. They're moving in such a way that the kingdom of God is going to be brought about by a political party. My left wing, the left wants their agenda too. If people want to be occupied with those things, that's fine. I want the hearts of people to be changed. I can't change that heart. The only thing I can do is come alongside them and ask God to work and watch God work, and then just be there and give resources. If you want to blow your mind, read Ezekiel 17. This is an incredible chapter about Israel, not the country of Israel, but the people of Israel. And it talks about the Christ figure putting Israel exactly where Israel needs to be. And it's very weird. It reads like Lord of the Rings. It says that he takes the topmost shoot of a cedar. These Lebanese cedars are 140 feet tall and 40 feet in circumference. God takes the topmost piece of Israel, and it says he plants it in the city of traders, by flowing water, in the best soil. I mean, Israel has everything it needs to prosper. The character that does this is the Christ character, but it says that it's an eagle. Powerful wings, full plumage, has a way of describing this eagle, and this is the Christ character. And it says that when he plants the tree, it doesn't become a tree at all, it becomes a low spreading vine. And this is the identity crisis of us. We think we're supposed to be following this conquering king, and we should be a king, and then all of a sudden God says, no, I'm going to leave you a low spreading vine. And now the enemy comes in. It says there's a second eagle. Describes it exactly like the first eagle. And it says now the vine turns its attention towards the second eagle. 11 chapters later, it's a very obtuse piece of scripture. 11 chapters later, it's called the Lament for the King of Tyre. But you read it, and it is a condemnation of the enemy. And, O guardian cherub, I mean, you just go down the list of the description of the enemy, and it says one thing, it's really weird. It says, he is perfect in beauty. And I read that, and I was like, oh, this makes sense now. If I'm going to take down the church, I'm going to do it with things that look just like Jesus. I have a lot of friends that talk about Jesus. John 5, Jesus looks at the Pharisees and says, you know this entire narrative, and yet you do not recognize me in this. You know the whole story. You don't even see me in this. We have to be a people that stop knowing a lot about God, because information is not our problem, right? We have access to all information now. I can have AI think for me. And it's just making us dumber. Our job is to get in front of a holy God and listen to his voice and know which one is real. Because in the end, if you read to the end of that chapter, he says, I will make the low tree flourish. I will make the dry tree flourish, and I will make the low tree grow tall. I am the Lord your God, and I will do it. He's going to glorify himself by himself. And he's just going to allow us to be a part of it. But we have to be the low-spreading vine and stick to the relationship. It's too easy to focus on the politics of it. What I'm saying is I'm introducing a chain back into the link. God broke the chains, and I'm saying, you know what, if I build this physical structure and I get people into this thing, that will, as long as I can correct the behavior, I can change the person. Well, for anybody in behavior management and any kind of social work and any kind of therapist will tell you it doesn't work that way, right? It's the soul. The ancient fathers of the church called it it's the very deepest part of who you are, and that's the part that connects with God. So that's the fix. We connect with God, and then we connect with God in somebody. So I let my people, my friends on the right and my friends on the left, I let them speak into me, and then I go to God and I ask God, and I test it with the scriptures. I'm like, tell me what I need to know. Tell me what's next. We have decided what heaven is going to look like on earth, but I will tell you, and I'm good at math, that we are excluding a whole bunch of people that are in the equation. And so it's easy for me to look at them and vilify them and say, well, they're doing this and they're changing the equation and blah, blah. If heaven is coming to earth, it's got to be good for you and for them. So why don't we ask them what would be good for them? I don't know. I could go on. But
Thanks. Other questions, guys? Oh, I have one. The other night the men talked about, the topic Wednesday night was anger.
yeah.
You mentioned that you were really angry. Have you dealt with that? How did you deal with it?
I'm really not angry with anybody right now except for God. That's my constant. God, why aren't you working? God, why don't you see us? So my daughter, we're here because we're taking her to Aladdin. And we want to see Auntie Jen. Auntie Jen is my little sister who doesn't look anything like me. She is a 14-year-old white kid who's in a Young Life campaigner group who started following me around when I went and taught her campaigner group, her Bible study. And 26 years later, she's one of my best friends, and she's my daughter's aunt. So we came up here to see Auntie Jen. And my daughters have healed a lot of my anger because I see the goodness of God kind of reigning over them. My daughter got sick 5 years ago. We've been in and out of the hospital for 5 years. So my anger has definitely changed, but it's still there. I will say that I'm very good at it. And so some of the things that we're really good at, we have to unlearn. And so I try not to deal with the anger. I try and deal with just the grace. Just remember how much grace has been given to me.
Anything else, guys? I think that's a good wrap-up. PW, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.